The chandelier above the Rizzo Estates ballroom refracted light across black marble floors, turning the surface into a dark mirror where I could see myself, sequined gown, borrowed diamonds, and the terror I was barely keeping off my face. My clutch purse pressed against my ribs like a heartbeat, the flash drive inside burning hotter than the champagne flute I'd abandoned 3 songs ago. I'd been researching the Rizzo family for 8 months, always from a distance, always through public records and sealed court documents. Tonight was supposed to be simple. Slip in with the press credentials I'd forged, photograph the East Wing transaction my source had mentioned, and disappear before the violins finished their second set. Of course, nothing about infiltrating the King of Embers' private gala was simple, especially when his head of security was now cutting through the crowd directly toward me. The ballroom stretched between me and the service exit like an impossible distance, all velvet ropes and bodies in $10,000 suits who wouldn't even notice if I screamed. The air was thick with cigar smoke and the cloying sweetness of champagne roses, arrangements so massive they could hide a body. My heels clicked against the marble, each step a countdown to either freedom or capture. 42 steps to the kitchen corridor. Then I could slip through the catering exit, into my car, and back to my apartment where this evidence could finally destroy the man who destroyed my father. 42 steps. I'd walked into war zones for stories with less fear than this. Before continuing the story, please consider giving this video a like, share it, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps bring more stories to you. Miss Parker. The voice stopped me like a hand around my throat. Not the security guard's bark I'd expected, but something lower, smoother, a sound that seemed to come from the shadows themselves. My pulse hammered against the hollow of my collarbone. I didn't turn around. Couldn't. Because I knew that voice from the wiretaps, from the leaked recordings my source had provided. That slight Italian inflection that made every word sound like both a promise and a threat. Basilio Rizzo had just said my real name. The hand that clamped around my upper arm belonged to someone who'd clearly broken bones before and wouldn't hesitate to break mine. I stumbled in my heels as he yanked me backward, my clutch nearly slipping from my grasp. I tightened my grip on it instinctively. The flash drive inside was worth more than my life at this point, which was a deeply ironic thought considering I was probably about to lose both. Move. The guard's voice was granite scraped across concrete. The ballroom blurred past as he dragged me through a side door I hadn't even noticed before, down a corridor where the music became muffled and distant. The walls here were different, no gilded frames or crystal sconces, just dark wood paneling that swallowed the light. This was the part of the estate guests never saw. The part where people like me disappeared. My journalistic brain cataloged details even as panic clawed up my throat. Mahogany doors with brass handles, security cameras in every corner, the faint smell of gun oil mixing with expensive cologne. I'd interviewed trafficking survivors who described rooms like this. Spaces designed to muffle screams. We stopped in front of a door that looked like all the others, except this one had 2 more guards flanking it. They didn't ask questions, just opened it and shoved me inside so hard I nearly fell. I caught myself on the edge of a massive desk, my palms slapping against leather and wood. The door clicked shut behind me with the finality of a coffin lid. "You can stand up, Miss Parker." I don't bite. A pause, weighted with dark amusement. Not immediately, anyway. The voice slid across my skin like silk hiding a blade. I forced myself upright, forced my spine straight even though every instinct screamed at me to run. There was nowhere to run. The room was large but felt small, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a fireplace with flames that cast dancing shadows, leather furniture that probably cost more than my annual salary. And in a high-backed chair near the fire, barely visible in the amber light, sat Basilio Rizzo. He didn't move. Didn't need to. The stillness itself was a flex of power, a predator so confident in his domain that sudden movements would be beneath him. I'd seen photos, of course. Grainy surveillance shots, a few carefully curated images from society pages. None of them had prepared me for the reality of him. Basilio Rizzo was beautiful in the way a straight razor was beautiful, all clean lines and lethal precision. Sharp jaw shadowed with stubble, dark hair pushed back from a face that belonged in Renaissance paintings of fallen angels. The firelight caught the planes of his cheekbones, the hollow of his throat where his white shirt was unbuttoned just enough to show olive skin. He wore his wealth quietly, no flashy jewelry, just a watch that probably cost 6 figures and a wedding ring that made my stomach drop until I remembered the intelligence file. Widowed 3 years ago. No children. But it was his eyes that froze me in place. Dark, almost black in this light, and completely unreadable. They tracked over me with the clinical precision of someone conducting an autopsy on a still-living subject. Sit. He gestured to the chair across from him with 2 fingers, the movement economical and absolute. I'd rather stand. The words were out before I could stop them. My father used to say my pride would get me killed someday. Looked like he was about to be proven right. Something flickered in Basilio's expression, not anger, but interest. Like I was a puzzle piece that didn't fit where he'd expected. He stood in one fluid motion, and suddenly the room felt half its size. He was taller than I'd anticipated, broad-shouldered under that perfectly tailored suit. As he moved closer, I caught his scent, bourbon and cedar and something darker, something that made the base of my spine prickle with animal awareness. He stopped just inside my personal space, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. You'd rather stand, he repeated, his voice dropping half an octave. Even when every survival instinct you have should be screaming at you to show submission. To lower your eyes. To beg for your life. He leaned in, and I felt his breath against my temple. But you won't, will you, Miss Parker? I should have looked away. Should have played the terrified victim. Instead, I met his gaze dead on, chin lifted in defiance that was absolutely going to get me killed. Is that what you want? For me to beg? His eyes darkened, pupils dilating until they nearly swallowed the iris. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. The fire crackled. Somewhere in the distance, the orchestra was playing Vivaldi. Then Basilio smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of a man who'd just found something he didn't know he'd been looking for, and who had no intention of letting it go. What I want, he said softly, reaching out to take my clutch from my white-knuckled grip with such casual authority I didn't even think to resist, is to understand what kind of woman forges press credentials, infiltrates my home, photographs my private business dealings, and then has the audacity to look at me like she's the one holding all the cards. He turned the clutch over in his hands, and my heart stopped. The flash drive. 8 months of investigation. Bank records, shell companies, witness statements. Everything I needed to destroy him. Everything he was about to take from me. Basilio's thumb found the clasp. The small click as it opened sounded like a gunshot in the quiet room. My lipstick rolled out first, a cheap drugstore brand that looked obscene against his palm. Then my phone, the burner I'd bought specifically for tonight. He set both on his desk with deliberate care, like a surgeon arranging instruments. My press badge came next, the forged one that had gotten me past the front gate. He studied it for a moment, thumb brushing over the fake credentials. Marjorie Parker, Metro Tribune. He read it aloud, then looked at me. Except the Metro Tribune hasn't employed anyone by that name in 6 years. I know because I own 40% of their parent company. Of course he did. I kept my expression neutral, but my pulse was jackhammering so hard I was certain he could see it in my throat. His fingers dipped back into the clutch. When they emerged, they were holding the flash drive. The small black rectangle looked impossibly insignificant in his hand. 8 months of my life. Every late night, every source I'd cultivated, every risk I'd taken. The entire architecture of his criminal empire reduced to 16 gigabytes of damning evidence. Basilio held it up to the firelight, turning it slowly. And what do we have here? Nothing that concerns you. My voice came out steadier than I felt. Everything in this room concerns me, Miss Parker. Especially uninvited guests who come bearing gifts. He moved to his desk, and I fought the urge to lunge for the drive. He'd snap my wrist before I got within 2 feet of it. But I'm a patient man. Let's see what was worth risking your life for. He slid the drive into his laptop with the calm of someone checking their morning emails. I watched the screen light up his face in blue-white, watched his expression shift from mild curiosity to something sharper. More focused. The silence stretched. My borrowed dress suddenly felt too tight, the boning digging into my ribs with each shallow breath. I'd encrypted everything, but any decent tech expert could crack it given time. And something told me Basilio Rizzo had excellent tech experts on retainer. Shell companies in the Caymans. His voice was conversational, almost pleasant. Offshore accounts. Transaction records dating back 15 years. He scrolled, eyes scanning faster than should be possible. Witness statements from dock workers. Shipping manifests. Even some creative photojournalism of my warehouses. He looked up, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. This is remarkably thorough work. I do my research. So I see. He closed the laptop but didn't remove the drive. Tell me, Miss Parker, are you working alone, or is this a group effort? Because this level of surveillance suggests resources. Time. Access to sealed records that shouldn't be accessible to a journalist from a paper that doesn't employ you. I said nothing. My father had taught me that silence was often the best defense. Of course, my father had also died in disgrace, so perhaps his advice wasn't as sound as I'd believed. Basilio stood, rounding the desk with predatory grace. Let me rephrase. Who sent you? Nobody sent me. This is my investigation. Your investigation. He stopped directly in front of me, close enough that I could count the flecks of amber in his dark eyes. Into what exactly? What truth are you seeking, Miss Parker? The question hung between us, genuine curiosity laced with something dangerous. I could smell bourbon on his breath, warm and intoxicating. My back was against the bookshelf now, when had I retreated, and he was crowding into my space like he had every right to it. Justice, I said finally. I'm seeking justice. Justice. He tested the word like it was a wine he was considering. How noble. How utterly predictable. His hand came up and I flinched, but he only pulled a book from the shelf beside my head. Do you know what I find fascinating about people who claim to seek justice? They rarely want justice at all. They want revenge dressed in prettier language. He was right, and I hated him for it. Your father was Thomas Parker, former city councilman. Died of a heart attack 18 months ago while under investigation for embezzlement and racketeering. Basilio's recitation was clinical, each fact a scalpel. You think I had him killed. You think I framed him. You've spent the better part of a year trying to prove it. My breath caught. How do you know everything about you? Because unlike you, Miss Parker, I actually am good at research. He set the book down, Marcus Aurelius, Meditations, and leaned in until our faces were inches apart. Your father's studio apartment in the Bronx. Your journalism degree from Northwestern that you're still paying off. The 3 papers that rejected your applications before you gave up and started freelancing. The fact that you take your coffee black because you can't afford cream. His voice dropped to a whisper. The fact that you sleep with a photo of your father on your nightstand and talk to it sometimes when you think you're alone. Ice flooded my veins. He'd been watching me. Not just tonight, but before. How long before? You're a truth seeker, he continued, straightening. That's what you called yourself in your journal, isn't it? The one you keep under your mattress. Very original hiding spot, by the way. He walked back to his desk, picked up the flash drive, and held it up. So here's your truth, Miss Parker. You're right about almost everything. I do run this city. I do control the ports, the unions, half the politicians. Your evidence is solid. Airtight even. Hope flared in my chest, desperate and foolish. But you're wrong about your father. The world tilted. I didn't kill Thomas Parker, Basilio said, his eyes locked on mine. I didn't frame him. In fact, I tried to save him. You're lying. The words came out harsh, broken. I wanted them to sound strong, defiant, but they just sounded desperate. Because if he wasn't lying, if my father hadn't been destroyed by this man, then everything I'd built my life around for the past 18 months was a fiction. Basilio didn't move, didn't blink. I don't need to lie to you, Miss Parker. I already hold all the cards. He set the flash drive down on the desk between us like a chess piece. Your father came to me 3 years ago. He'd gotten involved with some people, the Calabrese family, if you want names, who were using his position to launder money through city contracts. When he tried to get out, they threatened to expose him. Ruin him. Kill you. No. I shook my head, hair coming loose from its pins. No, that's not. He asked for my help. I gave it. Pulled strings to get the investigation dropped, made the Calabrese back off. It cost me a considerable amount of political capital. His voice was matter-of-fact, reciting a grocery list. But your father was a good man in a bad situation. I respected that. So I helped him. Then why did he die disgraced? Why was his name dragged through? Because someone else wanted him dead, and they had better reach than I anticipated. Basilio's jaw tightened, the first crack in his composure. The files were leaked before I could bury them completely. By the time I traced it back to its source, your father was already gone. I couldn't breathe. The corset of my dress felt like it was crushing my ribs, collapsing my lungs. Who? That's not information you need. Who? I stepped forward, fists clenched at my sides. Every ounce of fear had transmuted into rage, white-hot and consuming. You don't get to drop that on me and then I get to do whatever I want, Miss Parker. This is my house. My city. He rounded the desk in 2 strides, and suddenly we were toe-to-toe, my chest heaving against the proximity of him. You broke into my home. Spied on my business. Gathered evidence to destroy me. And now you're making demands. I deserve to know the truth. You deserve. His laugh was dark, humorless. You deserve nothing. You're alive right now because I'm choosing to let you live, but that can change in a heartbeat if you keep pushing. I should have stepped back. Should have lowered my eyes, played submissive, done anything to de-escalate. Instead, I lifted my chin and met his gaze with every ounce of defiance I had left. Then kill me. Because I'm not going to stop looking until I find out who destroyed my father. Something dangerous flickered across his face. His eyes darkened, pupils dilating as they tracked from my eyes to my lips and back again. The air between us crackled with a tension that had nothing to do with threats and everything to do with the electricity sparking where our bodies were almost touching. That look, he said softly, his voice dropping to a register that made my skin prickle. That's the second time tonight you've looked at me like that. Like what? The question came out breathier than I intended. Like you're not afraid of me. Like you're my equal. Like you're daring me to do something about the fire I see burning behind those eyes. His hand came up slowly, giving me time to move away, time to retreat. I didn't. His fingers brushed my jaw, tilting my face up to his. Do you have any idea how rare that is? How intoxicating. My heart was hammering so hard I could feel it in my fingertips. I'm not trying to intoxicate you. I'm trying to find justice for my father. I know. That's what makes it worse. His thumb traced my lower lip, and I hated that my breath hitched, hated that my body was responding to him when my mind was screaming danger. You're not some socialite playing at rebellion. You're the real thing. Smart, resourceful, fearless to the point of stupidity. Exactly the kind of woman who could either save a man like me or destroy him completely. I choose destroy. He smiled then, slow and predatory. See, there it is again. That look. That refusal to submit even when submission is your only logical choice. His hand slid from my jaw to the back of my neck, fingers threading into my hair. Not pulling, not yet, just holding me in place. I'm going to tell you something, Miss Parker, and I need you to understand that I'm not a man who makes idle threats. The room had gone completely silent except for our breathing, harsh and uneven. If you look at me like that again, with that fire, that defiance, that absolute refusal to acknowledge that I could snuff you out like a candle, I will take it as an invitation. His grip tightened slightly, just enough to make me gasp. I will claim you. All of you. I will put my seed in you and bind you to me so completely that you'll forget you ever wanted anything else. Do you understand? I should have been terrified. Should have been repulsed. Instead, heat coiled low in my stomach, dark and unwanted and utterly consuming. I held his gaze. Is that a promise or a threat? His eyes flashed. Both. Would you defy a man who holds your life in his hands, or would you look away? Drop your thoughts below, I want to know where you stand. The room they put me in was obscene in its luxury. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking manicured gardens, a 4-poster bed that could sleep 5 people comfortably, marble bathroom with a tub the size of a small pool. The kind of space that belonged in architectural magazines, not prisons. Except that's exactly what it was. I'd tested the door 3 times in the first 10 minutes. Locked from the outside, naturally, with some kind of electronic mechanism I had no hope of bypassing. The windows were bulletproof glass. I could tell by the slight green tint and the way they didn't rattle when I knocked on them. Even if I could break them, we were on the 3rd floor. The drop would shatter both my legs, assuming the armed guards patrolling below didn't shoot me first. A prison. A beautiful, suffocating prison. Someone had left clothes in the walk-in closet, designer labels, all in my exact size. The thought of Basilio knowing my measurements made my skin crawl. I'd stripped out of the borrowed gown immediately, leaving it in a sequined heap on the floor like a shed skin, and pulled on the simplest thing I could find, black silk pajamas that probably cost more than my rent. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent 18 months living on ramen and spite, and now I was being held captive in more luxury than I'd experienced in my entire life. I paced the room like a caged animal, mind racing. The flash drive was gone, but the files were backed up. Multiple locations, cloud storage with encryption, a safety deposit box at a bank in Queens. Basilio might have the evidence, but he didn't have all of it. I could still salvage this. I just needed to get a message out. My phone was gone, taken along with my clutch, but surely there was a landline somewhere in this palace. I searched every drawer, every cabinet, came up empty. Of course! Why would there be a phone in a prison cell? I tried the laptop sitting conspicuously on the antique desk. It booted up immediately, no password required, which should have been my first warning. The internet connection was strong, perfect even. I opened a browser and pulled up my encrypted email. The message composed itself in my head as I typed, compromised. Need extraction. Evidence secured. Rizzo knows everything. I had contacts, people who owed me favors, an editor at the Times who'd been interested in my investigation. Someone would come. Someone had to come. I hit send. The screen flickered. Then, instead of a confirmation, a new window opened. Security footage. Multiple angles. I watched myself in real time, sitting at the desk, staring at the laptop screen. Another camera showed the hallway outside my door. A third showed the gardens below, and in the corner of each feed, a timestamp and a label, Rizzo's secure network, monitor only. My stomach dropped. A chat window opened on its own, words appearing as if typed by a ghost. Did you really think I'd give you unsecured internet access? I stared at the screen, pulse hammering. Basilio. It had to be. Everything you do in that room is monitored. Every keystroke, every search, every desperate attempt to contact the outside world. The laptop isn't a courtesy, Miss Parker. It's a test. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, shaking with rage. I typed, "You're insane. I'm thorough. There's a difference. You can't keep me here forever." A pause. Then, "I don't need forever. Just long enough." Long enough for what? No response. The chat window closed itself. The laptop screen went dark. I slammed it shut, the sharp crack echoing through the room. "Coward!" I shouted at the cameras I could now see glinting in the corners like spider eyes. "If you're going to threaten me, at least do it to my face." Silence. I grabbed the nearest thing, a crystal vase filled with imported orchids, and hurled it at the closest camera. It shattered satisfyingly, water and flowers and glass exploding across the hardwood. The camera's red light continued blinking unmoved. "Let me out." My voice cracked. I hated the desperation in it, hated that I was giving him the satisfaction of seeing me break. But I couldn't stop. 18 months of control, of calculated moves and careful planning, shattered like that vase. "You can't do this. I have rights. People will be looking for me." The door clicked. I spun around, heart leaping. Freedom. Escape. But it wasn't a guard who stepped through. It was Basilio. He looked different than he had in his study, jacket gone, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms corded with muscle and scattered with scars. His tie was loosened, top buttons undone, hair slightly mussed like he'd been running his hands through it. He looked almost human. Almost, until you saw his eyes. "Rights," he said, closing the door behind him with a soft click. "You think you have rights here?" He stepped over the broken glass without looking down, his focus entirely on me. "Let me explain something about the world you've stepped into, Miss Parker. Rights are a fiction we tell ourselves to feel civilized. The truth is simpler. I have power and you don't. That's not your editor at the Times? The one you tried to email? I own him. Bought his mortgage last year when he was facing foreclosure. Every contact in your phone, every source you've cultivated, every person you think might come looking for you, I know about them. And they know better than to cross me. He was close now, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. I refused to look away, even as fear threaded cold fingers around my spine. No one is coming for you, Basilio said softly. This is your world now. These walls, this room, me. You can fight it, break things, scream until your voice gives out. Or you can accept it and make this easier on yourself. I'll never accept this. His smile was slow, dangerous. We'll see. The dress appeared on my bed the next evening like an accusation. Emerald silk that would cling to every curve. A neckline that plunged just shy of scandalous. No note, but the message was clear. I was expected somewhere, and refusal wasn't an option. I considered not wearing it. Considered greeting whatever came next in my borrowed pajamas as an act of defiance. But curiosity won out curiosity and the gnawing need to understand what game Basilio was playing. You couldn't beat an opponent whose rules you didn't know. The guards came at 7. They escorted me through corridors I hadn't seen before, past art that belonged in museums and windows that overlooked the city lights spread below like fallen stars. We stopped at a door of dark mahogany, and one of the guards knocked twice before opening it. The dining room was intimate, small table set for 2, candles casting golden light across white linens and crystal. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed the gardens in twilight, roses bleeding from red to black in the dying light. And at the head of the table, standing as I entered, was Basilio. He dressed for dinner. Charcoal suit, burgundy tie, cufflinks that caught the candlelight. He looked like every woman's dark fantasy and every father's nightmare, beautiful and deadly in equal measure. Miss Parker. He gestured to the chair across from him. I'm glad you decided to join me. As if I had a choice. There's always a choice. You could have refused the dress, barricaded yourself in your room, forced me to drag you here. But you didn't. He waited until I sat before taking his own seat. You came because you want to understand. That's your fatal flaw, you know. You can't resist a mystery. A man in a white jacket appeared from a side door, setting small plates before us, something with micrograins and edible flowers that looked too delicate to eat. The first course of what I suspected would be many. Is this where you wine and dine me before the murder? I picked up my fork, surprised to find I was actually hungry. Adrenaline could only sustain a person for so long. Very civilized of you. I don't want to murder you, Marjorie. He used my first name deliberately, intimately. If I wanted that, you'd be dead already. I want something much more complicated. My silence. Your partnership. He cut into his food with surgical precision. Eat. The chef is a genius. It would be a shame to waste his work on posturing. I took a bite despite myself. It was transcendent flavors I couldn't name, textures that melted on my tongue. I hated that it was delicious. Hated that my body responded to luxury even while my mind screamed at me to stay vigilant. Partnership, I repeated once I'd swallowed. Is that what we're calling hostage situations now? I'm calling it an opportunity. For both of us. He leaned back as the next course arrived, some kind of seafood in a cream sauce that smelled like heaven. You want to change this city? So do I. By controlling it through violence and corruption. By controlling it through power and efficiency. His eyes never left mine. Do you know what the city was before my family took over the ports? Chaos. 3 different families fighting for territory, innocent people caught in the crossfire, businesses unable to operate because they were being squeezed from all sides. I brought order. Order built on fear. Order built on respect. There's a difference. He took a sip of wine, something red and probably worth more than my car. I don't hurt people who don't threaten what's mine. I provide jobs, security, a functioning system where deals are honored and debts are paid. What do your precious politicians provide? Empty promises and photo opportunities. At least they're not murderers. Aren't they? He smiled, sharp and knowing. How many people died when the city council cut funding to public hospitals? How many overdosed on opioids prescribed by doctors bought by pharmaceutical companies that donate to political campaigns? Your hands-off politicians kill through negligence and greed. I kill through efficiency. Which is more honest? I wanted to argue, but the words stuck in my throat. Because he wasn't entirely wrong, and we both knew it. The main course arrived: beef so tender it fell apart under my fork, vegetables that tasted like they'd been picked that afternoon. We ate in silence for a moment, the clink of silverware against china the only sound. Why am I here? I asked finally. The real reason. Basilio set down his fork, his full attention on me. Because I've built an empire, Marjorie. I control the city's heartbeat. But empires need more than strength to survive. They need vision. Adaptability. They need someone who can see the cracks before they become chasms. And you think that's me? I know it is. You spent 18 months investigating me, found connections my own people missed, traced money through channels I thought were buried. You're brilliant, resourceful, and you have something I can't buy or intimidate into existence. He leaned forward, candlelight turning his eyes molten. You have fire. Real, uncompromising fire that refuses to be extinguished. I need that. My empire needs that. To balance your ice, I said softly, remembering the outline I'd read about him in my research. The King of Embers who ruled with calculated coldness. Exactly. He reached across the table, his hand covering mine before I could pull away. I'm offering you everything you wanted. Power to change this city. Resources to expose the corruption you spent your career chasing. Access to information that would make your journalist colleagues weep with envy. In exchange for what? My soul? His thumb traced circles on my wrist over my racing pulse. In exchange for your partnership. Your loyalty. Your legacy. His voice dropped to a whisper that somehow filled the room. Marry me, Marjorie. Be my queen. Together we'll reshape this city into something neither of us could build alone. The room spun. You're insane. I'm practical. You'll give me what I need, a public face beyond reproach, children who carry both your intelligence and my power, a partner who can think strategically instead of just following orders. He squeezed my hand once before releasing it. And I'll give you what you need: the truth about your father's death and the power to make his killers pay. If power to achieve justice meant becoming the very thing you swore to destroy, would you take it? Subscribe to see what Marjorie decides. Her choice changes everything. The explosion shattered the windows at 2 a.m. I was awake, had been for hours, staring at the ceiling and replaying Basilio's proposal in my mind like a horror film on loop. Marriage. Partnership. Becoming complicit in everything I'd sworn to destroy. The absurdity of it should have made me laugh, except nothing about my situation was funny. The blast threw me from the bed. Glass rained down in a glittering shower, and somewhere in the house, alarms began shrieking. I hit the floor hard, palms scraping against broken shards, ears ringing from the concussive force. Gunfire followed. The rapid crack of automatic weapons, close enough that I could feel it vibrating through the floorboards. My first coherent thought was, this is my chance. Whatever was happening, rival family, police raid, divine intervention, it meant chaos. Chaos meant opportunity. The guards would be focused on the threat, not on me. I could slip out in the confusion, steal a car, disappear into the city before Basilio even realized I was gone. I scrambled to my feet, glass crunching under my bare soles. Blood welled from a dozen small cuts, but adrenaline drowned out the pain. The door was still locked, but the window, the previously impenetrable bulletproof window, now had a hole torn through it from the blast, edges jagged, but wide enough to squeeze through if I was careful. More gunfire. Shouting in Italian, some of it Basilio's voice rising above the chaos, with commands that rang with authority even through the mayhem. He was still alive then. Still fighting. Not my problem. I owed him nothing. Less than nothing. I grabbed a blanket, threw it over the worst of the glass, and climbed onto the window ledge. The drop was still 3 stories, but there was a trellis covered in climbing roses just to the left. If I could reach it, use it to get down, an explosion, closer this time. The whole estate shook. I lost my balance, windmilling my arms, and for one terrifying moment I was certain I was going to fall. A hand grabbed my wrist, yanking me back inside. I spun, ready to fight, and found myself face to face with one of Basilio's guards. But his eyes were wrong, too cold, too empty. And the gun in his other hand wasn't pointed at the attackers outside. It was pointed at me. "Boss wants you alive," he said in heavily accented English. But he didn't say undamaged. Wrong boss. Wrong family. I was staring at an infiltrator who'd been waiting for exactly this chaos to make his move. My knee came up instinctively, caught him in the groin. Not elegant, but effective. He doubled over with a grunt, and I grabbed the nearest weapon I could find, the broken leg of a chair destroyed in the blast. I swung it like a bat, connected with his temple. He went down hard. I should have run then. Should have taken his gun and made for the trellis and never looked back. Instead, I heard myself asking, "Where's Basilio?" The guard groaned, semi-conscious. I grabbed his collar, shook him. "Where is he?" "Study," he mumbled through blood and broken teeth. "Trapped, east wing on fire." I dropped him and ran. The hallway was chaos. Bodies, I didn't look too closely to see which side they belonged to. Smoke thick enough to choke on, fire alarm screaming, the acrid smell of gunpowder mixing with burning wood. I knew I was making a mistake. Knew that every step toward Basilio was a step away from freedom. But I couldn't stop. The study door was blocked by a collapsed beam, flames licking at the doorframe. I could hear coughing from inside, harsh and desperate. Without thinking, I grabbed a rug from the hallway, soaked it in water from a shattered decorative fountain, and wrapped it around my arms. The beam was hot enough to blister even through the wet fabric, but I heaved against it anyway. It barely moved. My muscles screamed. Smoke filled my lungs until I thought I'd pass out. "Marjorie?" Basilio's voice from inside, rough with smoke and disbelief. "What the hell are you? Get out of here. Shut up and help me move this." Between us, we shifted the beam enough for the door to crack open. Basilio squeezed through, coughing, covered in soot and blood. His left arm hung at an odd angle, dislocated or broken, and there was a gash across his forehead bleeding into his eyes. He looked at me like I'd sprouted wings. "You should have run." "I know." And I did. I knew with crystalline clarity that I'd just made the worst decision of my life. That saving him meant any chance of escape was gone. That I'd chosen his life over my freedom, and I had no idea why. "Can you walk?" I grabbed his good arm, slung it over my shoulders. "Can you?" He nodded at my feet, leaving bloody footprints with every step. "We'll compare injuries later." "Move." We staggered through the smoke together, his weight heavy against my side. More gunfire erupted behind us, Basilio's men engaging the attackers, giving us cover we didn't deserve. The main staircase was blocked, but Basilio directed me toward a servant's passage I'd never seen. "Down," he gasped. "Panic room, basement." We half fell down the stairs, each step an agony of smoke and pain and adrenaline. At the bottom, Basilio pressed his palm against what looked like solid wall. It swung open with a hydraulic hiss, revealing a steel-lined room filled with monitors and weapons. We collapsed inside. The door sealed behind us with a final, damning click. Basilio slid down the wall, breathing hard, blood still streaming from his head wound. He looked at me through the gore and smoke, something unreadable in his dark eyes. "You came back for me. Don't read into it. I just didn't want to die in a burning building. You had a clear path to escape." His good hand reached up, cupped my cheek with surprising gentleness. "You came back anyway." I wanted to deny it. Wanted to claim strategy, self-preservation, anything but the truth that was crystallizing in my chest like ice. I'd saved him because the thought of him dying had terrified me more than staying captive. The panic room had a medical kit that belonged in a hospital. I found myself playing field medic at 4 in the morning, using supplies I barely knew how to operate on a man who'd been holding me prisoner for 3 days. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. "Hold still." I pressed gauze against the gash on Basilio's forehead, applying pressure to stop the bleeding. He didn't flinch, just watched me with that unnerving intensity that made my hands shake. "You have decent field training," he observed. His voice was rough from smoke inhalation, but steady. "Journalism school doesn't usually cover battlefield medicine. I covered the Syrian conflict for 6 months. You learn or you die." I taped the gauze in place, then moved to examine his arm. This is going to hurt. Everything hurts. But he braced himself as I felt along the joint, trying to determine if it was dislocated or broken. When I found the separation and pushed, testing, his jaw clenched so hard I heard teeth grinding. Dislocated? I think so. I need to reset it, but I've only done this once before, and that was on a 12-year-old. I gestured vaguely at his considerable frame. We should wait for a real doctor. No doctors. Not until I know who the infiltrator was. He looked at the monitors showing various angles of his estate, fires being extinguished, bodies being removed, his men systematically clearing each room. Someone on my payroll let the Calabrese through the perimeter. Until I know who, I trust no one. You trust me enough to let me reset your shoulder? His smile was pained but genuine. You had a chance to let me burn. You didn't. That tells me more about your character than 8 months of surveillance ever could. I didn't want to think about what that said about my character. Instead, I positioned myself, gripped his arm, and said, on 3. 1, I pulled hard. The shoulder popped back into socket with a wet click. Basilio's breath hissed out, but he didn't scream. Just leaned back against the wall, breathing hard, sweat beading on his forehead. You said 3. If I'd counted to 3, you would have tensed up. This was cleaner. I found a sling in the medical kit, began fashioning it around his arm. The Calabrese. They're the ones who killed your father. Yes. He watched my hands falter, then continue rapping. I told you someone else wanted him dead. Now you know who. Why? My voice came out hoarse. Why would they target him? Because your father discovered they were trafficking children through the port. Not drugs, not guns, children. He was going to expose them, and they couldn't allow it. Basilio's eyes were black in the dim light, but there was something almost gentle in them. I tried to protect him. But I was fighting a war on 3 fronts that year, and I didn't move fast enough. By the time I traced the leak back to the Calabrese, your father was already in the ground. The world tilted. I sat down hard on the floor, legs suddenly unable to hold me. Children. The evidence on your flash drive? It's good work, Marjorie. But you were investigating the wrong enemy. Everything you found on me, the shell companies, the offshore accounts, it's real. I won't insult you by denying it. But I've never touched the trafficking trade. Never. That's a line I don't cross. And I'm supposed to just believe you? You saved my life tonight when you had every reason to let me die. I think we're past the point of convenient lies. He shifted, grimacing as the movement pulled at his injured shoulder. The Calabrese came tonight because they know you're here. They know you have copies of your research. They're afraid you'll stumble onto the truth, that your father wasn't destroyed by me, but by them. My mind was racing, trying to reorder 18 months of assumptions. The files I gathered prove I run most of the city's underworld. Which I do. But they also prove I keep it clean. No human trafficking, no child exploitation, no random violence. I maintain order, Marjorie. The Calabrese traffic in chaos and misery. He leaned forward, his good hand reaching for mine. You wanted justice for your father. I'm offering you the chance to get it. In exchange for what? You said before, marriage, partnership, and heir. The words felt like ash in my mouth. That's still the deal? You stayed. His thumb traced over my knuckles, over the cuts from broken glass that were starting to sting now that adrenaline was fading. Not because I forced you. Because you chose to. That changes things. I stayed because I didn't want you to die. That doesn't mean I want to marry you. Doesn't it? His voice was soft, dangerous. You could have run, Marjorie. But when it mattered, when the choice was your freedom or my life, you chose me. That's not obligation. That's something else entirely. I wanted to deny it. Wanted to claim temporary insanity, smoke inhalation, any explanation except the one crystallizing in my chest. But I'd never been good at lying to myself. I hate you, I said, but it sounded weak even to my own ears. I know. But you also understand me. See me clearly in a way no one else ever has. He shifted closer until we were sharing breath in the small space. I'm not offering you romance, Marjorie. I'm offering you power. Partnership. A chance to reshape this city from the inside out. You become the face of the Rizzo Empire, the journalist who went from investigating corruption to eliminating it. Your integrity, your fire, balanced against my infrastructure and reach. And the air. Children cement dynasties. They also require trust, intimacy, vulnerability. His free hand cupped my jaw, tilting my face up. I could force a lot of things, Marjorie, but I can't force you to look at me the way you did tonight, like my death would matter to you. Like I matter to you. This is insane. This is survival. For both of us. His forehead touched mine, and I hated that I didn't pull away. The Calabrese won't stop. They'll come for you, for your evidence, for anyone who might expose what they've done. Under my protection, as my wife, you're untouchable. Without it, you're dead within a week. So my choice is marry you or die? Your choice is marry me and destroy the people who killed your father, or run and spend the rest of your short life looking over your shoulder. His lips brushed my temple, barely a touch. I know which one the woman who came back for me tonight would choose. Damn him. Damn him for being right. If I agree, I started. When you agree. If I agree, I want conditions. Full access to your network. Real power, not just ceremonial. And the Calabrese, I want to be there when they fall. His smile was slow, predatory, triumphant. Deal. He sealed it with a kiss that tasted like smoke and blood and choices I couldn't take back. The files arrived 3 days after the attack, delivered in a leather portfolio that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. Basilio set them on the breakfast table between my coffee and untouched croissant, his expression carefully neutral. Everything you asked for. Complete records on the Calabrese family going back 20 years. Shipping manifests, financial transactions, witness statements. He paused, something flickering in his dark eyes. And the truth about your father. My hand trembled as I reached for the portfolio. You could have fabricated this. Made it say whatever you wanted. I could have. But I didn't. He stood, adjusting his sling, still healing from the attack. I'll give you privacy. This isn't going to be easy to read. He left before I could respond, the door clicking shut with a finality that made my stomach clench. I opened the portfolio. The first document was a shipping manifest from 3 years ago, flagged by customs, but cleared through intervention from someone high up in the Port Authority. My father's signature was on the clearance form. Below it, in his handwriting, suspicious cargo requires investigation. He'd known. He'd seen something wrong and reported it. The next document was an internal memo from the district attorney's office. A note about concerns regarding Councilman Parker's instability and unsubstantiated allegations against respected business partners. The memo was signed by Marcus Chin, the DA who'd eventually prosecuted my father, the man I'd celebrated when he won his election, the progressive reformer who'd promised to clean up city corruption. My hands shook harder. More documents. Police reports that had been altered, witness statements that disappeared, evidence that had been misplaced. And threaded through all of it, like a spider's web, were names I recognized. People I'd trusted. Sources I'd cultivated. Colleagues who'd expressed sympathy for my father's downfall. Every single one of them had ties to the Calabrese family. There was a recording. I pressed play with numb fingers. My father's voice filled the room, staticky but unmistakable, speaking to someone I couldn't hear. I have proof now. Documented proof of what they're bringing through the port. Children, Marcus. Some as young as 6. I'm taking this to the press tomorrow, and I need you to, Tom. You need to think about this. Marcus Chen's voice, concerned and fatherly. These are serious allegations against powerful people. You could destroy your career over conspiracy theories. They're not theories. I have shipping records, testimony from workers who've seen, workers who are illegal immigrants facing deportation. Their testimony won't hold up. And going public with this kind of accusation without ironclad evidence will only make you look paranoid. A pause. I'm worried about you, Tom. Maybe you should talk to someone. The stress of the position, the long hours, you think I'm crazy. My father's voice broken. You think I'm imagining this. I think you're exhausted. Take a step back, let me look into this quietly. If there's something there, we'll build a real case. But going rogue like this? You'll only hurt yourself. The recording ended. I stared at the player, ice flooding my veins. Marcus Chin hadn't believed my father. Had dismissed him, suggested therapy, made him doubt his own sanity. And then, when my father had gone to the press anyway, when he'd tried to expose the trafficking ring on his own, the next document showed the timeline. The leaked financial documents suggesting embezzlement. The anonymous tip to the ethics committee. The media firestorm that destroyed my father's reputation overnight. All of it traced back to the DA's office. To Marcus Chin. The man I'd gone to for help when I'd started investigating my father's death. The man who'd encouraged my crusade against the Rizzo family, who'd suggested they were behind the frame job, who'd fed me information that pointed away from the Calabrese and toward Basilio. The man who'd been protecting the real monsters the entire time. My vision blurred. The documents swam before me. I found myself on the floor without remembering how I got there, portfolios scattered around me like evidence at a crime scene. The door opened. Basilio's shoes appeared in my line of sight, expensive leather, perfectly polished. He crouched down, gathered the papers with his good hand, set them aside. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I know what it's like to have your understanding of the world rearranged." "He came to you." My voice sounded distant, not my own. "My father came to you for help, and you tried." But a sob caught in my throat. "I spent 18 months convinced you killed him. I built my entire life around destroying you. And all that time, the people I trusted, the people I thought were good, were the real enemy." "I know." He sat down beside me, careful of his injured arm. "The Calabrese are good at this. They infiltrate positions of power, compromise the people society trusts, DAs, judges, politicians. They hide in plain sight while people like me take the blame. Marcus Chin is still the district attorney. He's running for mayor." The words tasted like poison. He used my father's death for political capital. Ran on an anti-corruption platform built on the corpse of the man he helped destroy. Yes. I looked at Basilio, really looked at him. The man I'd hated for so long. The man who'd tried to save my father while my allies were busy destroying him. "You were telling the truth. About all of it. I don't lie to you, Marjorie. I can't afford to. Not if we're going to work together." His hand found mine among the scattered papers. "The question is, what do you want to do with this information?" What did I want? I wanted to scream. Wanted to burn down the DA's office with Marcus Chin inside. Wanted to go back 18 months and investigate the right enemy. Wanted my father alive and vindicated and watching me succeed instead of lying in a grave with a reputation in tatters. But I couldn't have any of that. All I had was the truth and the man sitting beside me and a choice about what kind of justice I was willing to pursue. "I want to destroy them," I said, voice steady despite the tears streaming down my face. "All of them. The Calabrese, Marcus Chin, everyone who helped murder my father and then danced on his grave. I want them to feel what he felt, the betrayal, the helplessness, the knowledge that the people they trusted were the ones holding the knife." Basilio's smile was dark and approving. "Then we're in agreement. Welcome to the family business, Mrs. Rizzo." I should have corrected him. We weren't married yet, hadn't even discussed a timeline. But the title settled over me like a mantle, heavy and irrevocable. I'd crossed a line tonight. Traded my principles for vengeance, my integrity for power. The journalist who'd wanted to expose corruption had just agreed to marry the city's most dangerous criminal to destroy an even worse one. My father would have been horrified. Or would he? He'd gone to Basilio for help, after all. Had seen something in the King of Embers worth trusting. Maybe he'd understand that sometimes justice required getting your hands dirty. That sometimes the only way to fight monsters was to become one yourself. "When do we start?" I asked. Basilio squeezed my hand. "We already have. When the heroes you trusted turn out to be villains, do you abandon your cause or redefine your methods? Drop your answer below. This story's ending depends on choices like these." The wedding happened at midnight in the estate's private chapel, witnessed only by Basilio's most trusted men and a priest who asked no questions. I wore black, not the traditional white of innocence I'd lost somewhere between the ballroom and the panic room, but silk the color of mourning. Or perhaps of rebirth. Basilio's hand was steady as he slid the ring onto my finger. Platinum band embedded with diamonds that caught the candlelight like trapped stars. It was heavy, anchoring, impossible to ignore. A shackle disguised as jewelry, except I was putting it on willingly. With this ring I thee wed. His voice was low, intimate, meant only for me even though we had an audience. My fortune, my power, my empire, all of it becomes yours. My enemies become your enemies. My legacy becomes our legacy. The priest's words washed over me like water. Traditional vows about love and honor, sickness and health, till death do us part. None of it felt real. This wasn't a marriage born of romance or even necessity. This was a merger, a hostile takeover of my former life, a deal signed in blood and smoke and shattered ideals. You may kiss the bride. Basilio cupped my face with both hands. His injured arm had healed enough for the gesture, and kissed me like he was claiming territory. Deep, possessive, thorough. When he pulled back, his eyes were molten. Mine, he whispered against my lips. I should have felt trapped. Should have mourned the loss of the woman I'd been, the journalist with principles, the daughter seeking justice through righteous means. Instead, I felt powerful. The reception was small, exclusive family heads from allied organizations, politicians who owed Basilio favors, businessmen whose empires depended on his goodwill. They congratulated us with champagne and carefully neutral smiles, reading the shift in power dynamics with the skill of people who'd survived by understanding such things. I played my part perfectly. The reformed journalist who'd seen the light, who understood that true change required working within the system rather than against it. I smiled and thanked them for coming and let Basilio's hand rest possessively on my lower back. But I watched them too. Catalogued faces, names, connections. Building my own map of the city's power structure from the inside out. These were the people who enabled corruption, who looked away when convenient, who profited from the misery of others. They had no idea they were drinking champagne at their own wake. You're plotting something. Basilio's voice in my ear, amused. I can see it in your eyes. I'm plotting lots of things. You'll need to be more specific. That look. The one that started all of this. He turned me to face him, one hand sliding up to cup my nape. The one that told me you were dangerous long before I understood how dangerous. We were in his study, our study now, I supposed, after the last guest had departed. The city sprawled below us through the repaired windows, millions of lights representing millions of lives. People who had no idea that their world was about to shift on its axis. I've been thinking about Marcus Chin, I said. About the best way to destroy him. Exposure? Criminal charges? An unfortunate accident. Basilio's tone was conversational, like we were discussing dinner plans. All of the above, but in the right order. He's announcing his mayoral campaign next week. Big press conference, major donors, the works. I pulled up the file on his laptop, our laptop, showing the invitation I'd received that morning. He's invited me. The crusading journalist who lost her father to corruption. He wants me there as a symbol of his commitment to justice. Basilio's smile was slow and predatory. And you're going to go. I'm going to go. I'm going to stand beside him while he makes his speech about cleaning up the city. And then I'm going to present evidence of his connections to the Calabrese family, his role in my father's death, and his protection of a child trafficking ring. I looked up at my husband, that word still felt strange, and smiled. In front of every major news outlet in the state. He'll deny it. Call you compromised, point out that you married me. Let him. Because while he's denying it, the FBI will be raiding his office with warrants I've spent the last 3 days helping them prepare. Anonymous tips, unfortunately, but meticulously documented. I leaned back against the desk, feeling the solid wood beneath me. The same desk where Basilio had first issued his warning. By the time the dust settles, Marcus Chin will be in federal custody, and the Calabrese family's entire operation will be exposed. And the vacuum of power that leaves will be filled by people we choose. District attorneys who understand the value of cooperation. Judges who appreciate generous campaign contributions. Politicians who know which side their bread is buttered on. I met his eyes steadily. You taught me that power abhors a vacuum. So we'll fill it with our people. Basilio was quiet for a long moment, studying me like I was a puzzle he was still trying to solve. You've changed. The woman I captured in my ballroom wanted to expose corruption. Now you're embracing it. No, I'm redirecting it. I stood, moved closer until we were sharing breath again. Corruption will always exist, Basilio. That's what I've learned. The question isn't whether it exists, but who controls it. And I'd rather it be controlled by someone who won't traffic children than by someone who will. Justification is a slippery slope. So is moral purity. My father tried to be perfectly good, and it got him killed. My voice hardened. I'm choosing to be effectively ruthless instead. To build something that actually works, even if it's ugly. Even if it means becoming the kind of person I used to investigate. And you can live with that? I thought about my father's voice on that recording, pleading with Marcus Chin to believe him. Thought about the children being trafficked through ports while good people looked away. Thought about 18 months spent chasing the wrong enemy while the real monsters hid behind badges and courtrooms. I can live with anything, I said, as long as I destroy the people who killed my father. Basilio's hand slid around my waist, pulling me flush against him. Then let's burn it all down and build something better from the ashes. He kissed me again, deeper this time, and I kissed him back with the fervor of someone who'd stopped fighting her fate. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. If you look at me like that again, he murmured, echoing his first warning, I will put my seed in you. This time, I didn't flinch. Didn't look away. Instead, I met his eyes with full understanding of what I was accepting, not just a child, but a dynasty. Not just marriage, but an empire. Promise? I whispered. His answering smile was everything dark and dangerous and mine. Promise. The city lights glittered below us, and I thought about all the ways we would reshape them. Not through exposure and righteousness like I'd once planned, but through power and strategy and the kind of justice that didn't make it into textbooks. My father had wanted to save this city. I was going to conquer it instead. And standing beside the King of Embers, my hand in his, our future written in the spaces between legal and necessary, I finally understood what it meant to rule. Not through fear alone, but through the kind of partnership that could either save the world or destroy it. We'd find out which soon enough. Thank you for listening until the very end. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the story. There's another story like the one you just enjoyed on your left screen.